Facing 3 bets, out of position, calling too wide. The leak, calling station in 3-bet pots. You are calling 3 bets out of position with hands that do not meet the expected value threshold. Online, this leak compounds fast with multi-tabling, rake drag, and autopilot frequencies. Your opponent prints by realizing position, initiative, and fold equity, while your equity realization, R, collapses. Calling is not keeping the pot small. Calling is choosing a line where you must defend multiple streets with a capped range and lower equity realization, R. If you are not constructing a deliberate 4-bet and call range, you are playing hope poker. First, primary symptom. You defend pre-flop because the hand looks playable. Second, secondary symptom. You call again on the flop because you have equity. Third, end result. You bleed small pots and occasionally stack off dominated. Y, out of position calls. Fail, R, initiative, and capped ranges. Out of position, your equity realization, R, is the tax. You do not get to see turns and rivers for free, and you do not control bet sizing. In 3-bet pots, stack-to-pot ratio is lower, so mistakes get paid immediately. When you flat the 3-bet, you are usually capped versus uncapped. Villain keeps many strong hands. You often remove them to 4-bet or fold them by mistake. That makes your range easier to barrel and harder to check raise. First, in position 3-better is uncapped. They can have pocket aces, pocket kings, ace-king suited. Second, your flatting range is capped. It overcontains medium pairs and suited connectors. Third, initiative. They see bet more profitably. You defend more awkwardly. Pre-flop, the real question is not, do I have equity? The question is, can I realize it at this rake in this configuration? In most online pools, the answer is no for marginal hands. First, tracking software will show the leak as low win rate in 3-bet pots out of position. Second, look for negative big blinds per 100 when calling 3 bets from small blind or big blind. Third, then filter by hand class, offsuit broadways, low-suited gappers, small pairs. TPP exploit framework. First, the exploit. 3-bet, wider in position, use small sizing. C-bet more frequently on high cardboards. Second, the risk. You over 3-bet into opponents who 4-bet aggressively. Third, the counter. Tighten your bluffs. 5-bet jam, more linear value. Call more with strong bluff catchers. Range architecture, linear versus polarized, and where you go wrong. You cannot build a correct calling range without understanding linear versus polarized ranges. Most 3-bets in online pools are closer to linear, especially from blinds versus steals. Linear 3-bets punish your marginal opens and your wide calls. Your mistake is calling hands that only function versus polarize at 3-bets. Example, small suited connectors do fine when villain has many bluffs. They do poorly when villain's range is dense with high cards and overpairs. First, hands that get overcalled out of position. 8-7 suited, 7-6 suited, 10-8 suited, King-Jack offsuit, Queen-10 offsuit. Second, hands that get set mind without odds. Pocket 4s, pocket 5s, pocket 6s. Third, hands that look pretty but realize badly. Ace-9 offsuit, King-10 offsuit, Queen-Jack offsuit. You need a hierarchy. 4-bet value, 4-bet bluff, call, fold. If a hand is not a clean fit, it usually belongs in fold. TPP exploit framework. First, the exploit versus linear 3-bets, tighten out of position calls. 4-bet more value, reduce suited connector calls. Second, the risk, you fold too much and get exploited by aggressive 3-betters. Third, the counter, add blocker-based 4-bet bluffs and defend with higher card strength calls. MDF is not a permission slip. Minimum defense frequency, MDF, is a model, not a life rule. In theory, you must defend enough versus a given. 3-bet sizing to deny auto profit. In practice, your defense must account for rake and equity realization, R. Online rake pushes optimal defense tighter. Multi-tabling pushes you tighter again because you will misplay low-frequency lines. If you cannot execute a post-flop strategy, you should not defend pre-flop. First, when you call too wide, you force yourself into low expected value check-call sequences. Second, you arrive on turns with weak pairs and no clear check-raise candidates. Third, your range is capped versus uncapped, so villain barrels more. Use MDF as a check, then apply reality. Reality is pool tendencies, rake drag, and your own accuracy under volume. If you want to defend wider, do it via 4 bets, not passive calls. TPP Exploit Framework. First, the exploit. Identify players overfolding to 3 bets, then 3-bet them wider and smaller. Second, the risk. You run into sticky defenders and bloat pots with dominated bluffs. Third, the counter. Shift to more linear, value-heavy 3-bets, reduce low-equity bluffs. Blockers and unblockers, stop choosing the wrong combos. Your 4-bet bluffs should be built on blockers and unblockers. A blocker reduces the chance villain has the hands that continue. An unblocker keeps villains' folds in their range. First, better 4-bet bluff candidates. Ace-5 suited through ace, 2 suited, king-5 suited through king-4 suited in some pools. Second, worse, 4-bet bluff candidates, 8-7 suited, 7-6 suited. They unblock folds and play poorly when called. Third, problem calls out of position. King-Jack offsuit blocks King-Queen and King-Jack type folds, yet gets dominated by value. Your out-of-position calling range should prefer hands with robust equity and lower domination risk. Think suited broadways and higher pairs, not offsuit trash. Think hands that can check, raise value, and bluff on the right textures. TPP Exploit Framework. First, the exploit, 4-bet bluff with strong blockers versus tight. 3-bet ranges, deny them realization. Second, the risk, you over 4-bet bluff versus players who call 4 bets too wide. Third, the counter, reduce bluffs, expand 4-bet for value, and size up for isolation. Actionable pre-flop rules for out-of-position defense. Stop guessing, use a repeatable framework. When you are out of position, calling should be the smallest bucket. Most of your expected value is in disciplined folds and high-quality 4-bets. First, default out of position versus button. 3-bet. Call tighter, 4-bet more with blockers, fold offsuit broadways. Second, default out of position versus blind. 3-bet, expect more linear, reduce suited connector calls. Third, small pairs. Do not set mine without direct odds. Implied odds are capped in 3-bet pots. Fourth, offsuit broadways. Fold more, king-jack. Offsuit and queen-jack offsuit are dominated and low R. Fifth, suited connectors. Call selectively. Prefer higher. Jack-10 suited better than 8-7 suited. If you cannot state your plan on most flops, your call is not a call. It is hope. Hope is not an input to expected value. TPP Exploit Framework. First, the exploit versus wide out of position callers. 3-bet bigger, C-bet frequently, double barrel, high card runouts. Second, the risk, you overbarrel into slow plays and strong bluff catchers. Third, the counter, reduce turn barrels, increase pot control, and value bet thinner when checked to. Scenario box. Hero, 8 of spades, 7 of spades in small blind. Flop, king of clubs, 9 of hearts. 2 of spades. Action, button opens, you call, big blind folds. Button 3 bets, you call out of position. Button C bets 1/3 pot. Your hand has backdoor equity, but your equity realization R is poor. You are facing a range that is uncapped and can barrel turns heavily. The correct adjustment is pre-flop, not heroics on the flop. First, pre-flop. This is often a fold versus linear 3 bets and higher rake environments. Second, on the flop, you should mostly fold, unless you have a clear check-raise strategy with range support. Third, if you continue, you must have explicit turn plans on spades, tens, jacks, and barrels you will give up on. Fixing the leak, build a real 4-bet and call strategy. Your goal is to remove the call because playable node from your decision tree. Replace it with a structured range that respects position and sizing. Then you can execute under volume, even while multi-tabling. First, 4-bet value, hands that dominate continues, usually pocket queens, and better an ace-king suited, plus some ace-queen offsuit versus wide 3-bets. Second, 4-bet bluffs, blocker-heavy suited aces, ace-5 suited through ace-2 suited plus selective suited kings. Third, calls higher pairs and strong suited broadways, avoid domination, avoid low R hands. Fourth, folds most offsuit broadways, low-suited gappers, weak-suited aces that get dominated. This is how you win 3-bet pots. You enter with hands that can take aggressive lines, and you stop paying rake to see a flop. Your database will reflect it quickly. TPP Exploit Framework. First, the exploit versus players who call 3-bets out of position too wide, 3-bet more, size up, and apply turn pressure. Second, the risk. You get too bluff heavy and face more 4-bets, reducing your expected value. Third, the counter. Respond with tighter. 3-bet bluffs, higher value density, and more 5-bet value. TPP Key Takeaway. When you face a 3-bet out of position, your default mistake is calling too wide. You lose expected value through low equity realization, R, being capped versus uncapped, and paying rake to continue with dominated hands. Fix it by shrinking your call bucket, building blocker-driven 4-bet bluffs, and folding hands like king-jack offsuit, 8-7 suited, and set mines like pocket 4s without odds. Now, let's test your edge. Question 1. What is the core reason the article says out of position calls in 3-bet pots fail, even when your hand has some equity? Answer. You cannot realize your equity well out of position, especially with rake and low stack-to-pot ratio in 3-bet pots. Explanation. The article frames equity realization, R, as the tax of being out of position. You don't control sizing, face multiple streets, and mistakes get punished immediately in lower stack-to-pot ratio 3-bet pots. Question 2. When you flat a 3-bet out of position, what range disadvantage does the article emphasize you usually create? Answer. You become capped while the in-position 3-better stays uncapped. Explanation. The text explains the in-position 3-better can still have top hands, while your flatting range over-contains medium-strength hands, making you easier to barrel and less able to apply aggression. Question 3. According to the article, why is MDF not a permission slip for defending wide versus 3-bets online? Answer. Because practical defense must account for rake and equity realization, and multi-tabling increases execution errors. Explanation. The article says MDF is a model, but real-world factors, rake drag, poor R out of position, and lower accuracy under volume push optimal defense tighter. Question 4. What does the article recommend as the main way to defend wider if you want to avoid passive out-of-position calls? Answer. Defend wider via 4-bets, not passive calls. Explanation. The text repeatedly advises shrinking the call bucket and using higher quality 4-bets, value and blocker-based bluffs instead of see a flop calling. Question 5. In the scenario provided, small blind calls a button 3-bet with a suited connector and faces a 1/3 pot C-bet on a high card flop. What does the article say is the correct adjustment? Answer. Make the fix pre-flop by folding more often. Once on the flop, mostly fold unless you have a clear check-raise strategy with range support. Explanation. The scenario notes poor equity realization versus an uncapped range and says the right solution is not heroics, post-flop, but tighter pre-flop defense and only continuing with a defined plan. Study hard, play smart. That's it for now. I'll see you in the next lesson.